Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is Sajjad Ayub. This is Sajjad Ayub and Shaykh Ebrahim Schuitma. Discourse 9, the worship of the free. In your book on Discourse 9, again, we explore the idea of submission and the idea of a leap into faith, of going out into the unknown. You know, a middle-class family, 2.5 children, 2 cars in the driveway, nice middle-class family with a nice house. Can you expand from there? Is this a plan that we've thought up?
Well, I think that is true. I think it is a plan that we thought up, and it's actually not a very satisfying plan. It's quite a miserable one. You know, if we look at how we orientate young adults into their lives, you know, it's sort of we will only accept them accepting money, assets, and a pension. You know, there's and people pursue that because they buy most of us buy that program. We think that happiness is on the other end of this sort of happy nest of children and success and all of that. And so we pursue that and we sacrifice for that. We do get the trophy career and the trophy spouse, and dare I say, the miserable trophy children, because for them to be our trophies, we have to do such violence to their lives that they don't feel like they have them. So I just want to be an artist, but I mean, no, you can't be an artist, you've got to be an engineer. You know, and I'll write you out of my inheritance if you don't become one.
Or a doctor.
We sort of people at or a doctor, yes. Not a shopkeeper like me. So we aim people at this life, which we think is the good life, you know, and we have all been aimed at what our parents thought was the good life. And that good life then ends us up at, you know, in our 40s to 50s. Having achieved that stuff. So you do have the trophy spouse, you do have the trophy children, you do have 2 nice cars in the garage, and you do have the holiday home on the Bodrum coast. And you wake up one morning with this unbelievably kind of sort of heavy sense of dread, you know, feeling that, you know, this isn't scratching my itch. I'm deeply miserable. You know, we had an expression in South Africa, you still sometimes hear it. I think it's a very charming expression. You know, what does the fox terrier do when it catches the Volkswagen? So what does the little dog do when it finally catches the car it's been chasing down the road for like years? Well, actually, he doesn't have a clue. I mean, what, you try and chew the tires? What do you do? So when you finally caught this trophy life of yours, what good does that do for you? Because what you suddenly discover is that in the pursuit of this life, you've exercised exactly the opposite skill that is actually fundamentally useful to you in being alive. I mean, you've exercised a skill at accumulation, at accretion, at laying up of stuff. And one can look at this way of engaging your life and being orientated to your life as having what you can call a receding view of time. So you're saying, well, I was born, and then as I grew, I accumulated more, I'm getting more, I'm achieving more. There's basically more and more of me as I get older and older. Then at some point in your life, you realize, hold on, that isn't true. If this is my whole life, There isn't more of me as I get older and older. Actually, there's less and less of me. Every moment that I'm alive is not actually an opportunity to accumulate yet something else. It actually requires me to hand over something, to lose something, to give up. There's not more of me as I get older. There's less of me as I get older. I mean, obviously there's less of you. Every moment that you have is not a moment you'll have again. It's expended, it's gone. There's fewer and fewer moments left as you, in other words, the real skill of being alive isn't a skill of accumulation, it's a skill of loss. And the problem with the grand bourgeois aspiration is that it puts you completely at sea with being able to exercise that skill of loss. You know, so in fact, the skill of loss presents itself as completely irrational to people of that world. You know, they see somebody who, for instance, is willing to kind of, you know, I don't know, spend long periods of time in prayer or spend time in seclusion, in khalwa, and they think, well, this guy's nuts. I mean, you know, what a waste of a life. You know, it appears the endeavor of learning to give or submit seems completely bizarre to people of the grand acquisition. They see it as something incomprehensible. So this, to discover who you really are, to explore the truth of your life, that you are not a being accumulating, you're not a being laying up, you're a being that's being stripped off. That the real skill that the real kind of competence you need to develop is a competency in loss and not a competence in accumulation. That is something that needs you to leap out of the safety and the security, the illusory safety and security of this socially agreed on good life. Now, it's very important that I make this point. This doesn't give you license to abandon your family and to run out. It's just saying, don't ask your family to bear the burden of your himmah, of your desire, of your aspiration. You see, because they cannot. The human heart has been made for one thing only, and that is for the Rabb. This is a huge aspiration. This is about as heavy a charge as anything can bear. And what do? We go and put that heavy weight, that heavy aspiration on something as brittle as, you know, 2 kids in a house in Kent. I mean, it cannot sustain it. You know, no created thing can sustain the weight of deep human aspiration, because deep human aspiration is for the Rabb, which means you'll break it. You'll either break it or it'll break you. It's not sustainable. And so what happens when we hit our midlife? The first thing we do is we blame our disquiet, our sense of disturbance on the life. Oh, you see, it must be her. She's made me miserable. With these children of mine, I mean, really, you know, I mean, if only the one become an engineer, you know, or you know, well, I mean, I do have a Honda in the garage, but I would much prefer a Mercedes-Benz. You know, I mean, so whatever it is, there's like a dissatisfaction with it, and we think that dissatisfaction is going to go away by either changing it, you know, forcing him to become an engineer, you know, getting rid of the wife because besides she's become a bit pudgy in her middle age, and you know, I get something a little bit more sleek. You know, whatever you do to the world outside of yourself,
or vice versa,
that doesn't scratch the itch. Yeah, or vice versa. Yes, indeed. That's yeah. Sometimes they get rid of you. I must tell you, that's happened to me a few times in my life. It's a miserable experience. Yeah, so you break the thing, You break that. If you think that this thing of the bourgeois dream, that image with the two little kids, the picket fence in the house and the car, and that thing's going to make this happy, it isn't. And if you put this thing's need, the thing of your heart's need on top of that thing, your heart's need is so heavy, it'll break it. You'll end up dissatisfied and you'll end up destroying that thing. So you'll either leave get out of the marriage, you'll either, unless you reorientate your life and you get out of the illusory garden, this little sort of postage stamp of lawn that you think contains happiness, because that doesn't contain happiness. Happiness is everything but that. You have to get out of that garden. You have to get out of that normal life. Carry on.
How do you do that? What does one do? How does one reorientate oneself? If you're so down deep into that abyss.
Yeah. Well, I think you need to start developing competency in navigating the space, the reality that sits behind your eyes. You need to start doing inner work. I think one of the things that I've really trying to kind of make almost a theme in my life, or a cause in my life, is to convince people of the legitimacy of inner work. And inner work includes your salah, it includes your sawm, it includes your it includes your zakah, but it is more than that. It is getting up for tahajjud. It is learning how to meditate. It is doing whatever you need to do to break the habit of your goal-orientated approach to things, to make your endeavor, as much of your day-to-day endeavor, not stuff in front of your eyes, achievements in front of you, but exploration behind your eyes, on the inside. And that's very doable work, and that work that we as people of Tasawwuf have got quite a body of tools and techniques for, that we've actually shamelessly stolen from anybody else. So we really have quite an eloquent sort of deck of cards that we can play in this endeavor. We really do have to start making deliberate work of doing inner work. That's how you get out of this. And until you start doing it, you'll stay unhappy.
Man, this is going to be...
It's amazing how much of your disquiet...
I was going to say, it's amazing that, now in the time of Ramadan, that we've got listeners and viewers as well. Those things are very, very important during Ramadan. And how do they continue that after Ramadan? How do they fixate themselves? What systems can they put in place to take them out? Because the mortgage, the bills, all these things, the family, the children, these things will get, they're real. This is real life.
Well, I think we're actually contending the opposite here. This isn't real life. This is fantasy. What is real? What is it doesn't do it for real. Your endeavor, you do things to achieve something, to have a sense of fullness. But how many of these things don't just make you more anxious, make you more give you a greater sense of disquiet? And miserably, very often, the more you get of the... So, okay, let's say you've actually managed to pay the mortgage. And your wife drives down the road and she sees, but that's a really nice... Wouldn't it be nice? Because that house has got an extra sunroom, you see. And so you back into the mortgage. You know, and when's this going to end? At what point is it going to end? When are the accumulations going to be enough? You know, surely if you caught somebody who is deeply, or found somebody who's deeply thirsty, and they had salt water, and they were drinking the salt water, you would say to them, listen, this stuff that you're drinking, this is an illusion. This is not going to make your thirst go away. It's going to make it worse. Because let's assume that it may be even worse. You didn't get the bigger house. You kept the old house so that you can mortgage that to somebody else or rent that to somebody else so that you can now have two houses, which means that you now have two houses to lose. What's more difficult to lose, two things or one thing? You know, so the more things we own, the more things that we are going to lose. So this idea that this steady accumulation of stuff actually addresses the problem of our need for a sense of security, and that's the thing that's sitting underneath what you're saying. You know, the reality of it just doesn't. It actually makes it worse. You know, we have this thing that our assets secure us. You know, that's like if you have, you know, if I don't know if I've used this metaphor before in any of the, please stop me if I haven't, because I don't want to bore anybody, but this thing of your house being the source of your security, you know, that, did we speak about this?
No,
I can't remember. No, we haven't, right. We might have done personally, but,
yeah.
You know, so let's assume this wonderful house that you're in now, that you've actually, because in most cultures, by the way, people do think that their house makes them secure. And if I've paid off the mortgage and I have the title deed to the house in my own sort of safe, I'm secure.
Yeah.
But if you consider what does the word security mean? What does something promise to do for you if it promises to make you secure? Well, the first thing it promises to do is to protect you. The security industry protects people, right? So if you say your house is going to make you secure, you're saying my house is going to protect me. Okay, so let's assume you've got a couple of South Africans living in your street, and they really, I mean, they're not nice people. I mean, I know I am one. So, and you're coming home this afternoon from work.
I've got four surrounded.
And you've got four. You're surrounded by them. Right. Okay. Be careful. So one of them is likely to be a bad one because there's quite a few of them. So as you're walking to your front door this afternoon, the bad South African leaps up from behind a bush, and he beats you to within an inch of your life. This is the most unbelievable assault. I mean, it's a really vicious attack. You know, I don't think your house is going to rush to your defense. I don't think your house is going to throw a brick at the South African and say, hey, you can't beat him, he's my boss. So this idea that we have that our assets protect us is just nuts, because you're ascribing to this thing some kind of volition. You're saying this thing has undertaken a custodial responsibility with regard to me. You know, that's what something that protects me promises to do. It accepts a custodial responsibility. If there's a disaster aimed at me, it will rush to my defense. There's not a single asset that you have that will rush to your defense when a catastrophe is aimed at you. You know, so this idea that your things protect you is nuts. This idea that your security is to be laid at the door of your things is insane. You know, you can't accumulate yourself into being more secure. You actually accumulate yourself into the opposite. Because, so we say you didn't get assaulted by the South African, right? But you did upset him. And when you were away at work, he invades your house and he completely vandalizes your house. I mean, the most shocking kind of experience, you know, the most obscene graffiti on the walls, cement in the plumbing, smashed glassware. I mean, it's just the most shocking thing. You arrive home this afternoon to your vandalized house. Will you be cross? You will be cross. You know, so consider this. Who's there to look after you? Are you there to look after the house, or is the house there to look after you? You know, clearly you're there to look after the house. So while not a single asset that you have has ever admitted a custodial responsibility with regard to you, you've admitted a custodial responsibility with regard to every one of your assets, which means to say, while your house won't rush to your defense when the disaster is about to hit you, you will rush to your house's defense when the disaster is about to hit it. So quite literally, you don't accumulate yourself into being secure, you accumulate yourself into being insecure, because the more things you own and have, the more things the South Africans can take away from you. So this endeavor, this aspiration that we have, that we think is going to give us the good life, and it's one populated by assets and things and significance, and this is a mirage. In fact, it's worse than a mirage, because it does exactly the opposite. I mean, the mirage just doesn't give you water, but this is the opposite. It actually makes you more thirsty. This is salt water for the thirst, not illusion for the thirst. Our sort of bourgeois lifestyle and aspirations, middle-class aspiration, is deeply toxic for our souls and doesn't satisfy us. That doesn't mean to say you don't have the car and you don't have the house, but you don't make that thing carry your himma. You don't make that thing carry your fundamental aspiration. Because it cannot, and it'll break and leave you disappointed.
Thank you for that. What is faith?
I think, so again, let's just go back to, I mean, you used the English word, you didn't use the word iman, you used the word faith. So I'm going to stick with, Germanic languages, because I also speak Afrikaans, another Germanic language. Faith basically and trust are related ideas. I mean, so in, to believe and to trust in Zulu is exactly the same word. It's ukuthemba. It's the same word. So belief and trust are the same. And the point about trust is that it's a future-orientated idea. I trust things will go well. I trust you won't do me in. I trust, so when we use the word trust, when we gauge trust, we're looking forward to the future. Now, let's assume that everything, in my view, everything that's happened up to me to this point has been unjust, brutal, and kind of damaging to me. If that is my conviction, if I think that everything that has gone prior to this moment has been bad, on what basis do I have to look forward with trust? I cannot look forward with trust. So to have faith, to look forward with trust, has to mean that you are basing this on the opposite of resentment, the opposite of victimhood. So if I look at the past and I see that I have received in excess of my due, and I'm therefore grateful, I then have the material to look forward with trust and faith. I then know that things will go well, whether or not I personally can account for them going well. So to have faith and not to be grateful is a contradiction in terms. You cannot. These two things can't sit together. So there's volumes of implications to this. The one is that any victim narrative is unsustainable. It's just not. It's inconsistent with being a believer. Because if you have a victim narrative, then you're saying it's all been bad and it's all been done to destroy me. So, but on what basis then do you have to look forward with trust? We've said this before. Kufr isn't just a lack of belief in Allah. Kufr is also defined as ingratitude. On the basis of your gratitude, you trust. On the basis of your affirming that you've received in excess of your due, you can look forward at life with a sense of good expectation from your Rabb. There's a last point I want to make about this. This also demonstrates why any narrative that is concerned with conspiracy is nonsense. The Zionist conspiracy, the whatever you want, the Illuminati, however you view them, who says these people are in charge of history? They're not in charge of history. Allah's in charge of history. So, and if they have machinations, the same thing will happen to them as what happens to you when you have machinations. They will walk into a pole because he will make them walk into a pole. So this thing that we have really cultivated as Muslims today, which is to have this cynicism of the world around us and thinking about all these conspiracies, these dark conspiracies, this is naive. I mean, it belies our faith.
Such an interesting topic, Sheikh Saad. Thank you so much for that. Thank you once again.